Finding the perfect electronic drum kit for a beginner can be pretty tricky. I mean, you want something that's affordable, something that's fun to play on because you want to practice on it actually, and somewhat realistic. And that's exactly where the Donner DED-200 MAX comes in, at least according to their marketing information. Now, they sent one out for me to check out, so we're gonna review it. So the 200 MAX is an upgraded version of their 200 series, and it's primarily designed for beginners and hobbyist drummers. It's got mesh drum heads, it's got realistic looking drum shells that look nice, it's compact, and it's pretty affordable. Earlier this year, I checked out their flagship E-kit, which is the Backbeat, and this kit in comparison is a lot more affordable. For beginners, it's a solid starting point to develop your skills, so we're gonna find out if the DED-200 MAX stacks up against the competition. And if you're watching this during Black Friday, I've got a discount code to get 25% off this drum set. I'll have that link down below in the video description. So the Donner DED-200 MAX is really neatly packed and everything's organized in individual boxes. I pretty much speed ran the entire unboxing and assembly for this. That is the most annoying part of getting an electronic drum set. Unboxing these things takes a while and putting them together is a bit of a chore, but this one was easy to work with, thankfully. And for first timers, it's gonna be less intimidating. The cables are labeled so you know exactly where everything has to plug in. The only frustrating part is finding the jacks on the drum pads. If you're looking top down, they're on the left side here. That can be kind of tricky if you're unfamiliar with E-kits. It's like trying to figure out where to plug stuff in, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. There was two issues that stood out to me during assembly. One is the kick drum pedal and the other is the drum throne. The kick pedal does not want to clamp securely onto the kick tower. I tried a lot of different things and tried to get that to work, but it just seems like I had to get it set perfectly, and even then, the kick pedal and the tower really want to slide forward, and there's really not a sturdy base on the kick pedal. So what you have to do is tighten the spurs down pretty good on the kick tower, but still, I can't recommend using this kick pedal to learn how to play the drums. You gotta upgrade to the Yamaha FP7210 or something just a little bit more stable. And it's nice that Donner gives you these accessories for the absolute beginner that wants everything all in one. But trust me, you're going to want to upgrade that. Now the throne, on the other hand, is really lightweight and it's really small. So unless you're a younger player, this thing is not gonna offer much stability at all. For an upgrade suggestion, I recommend the Gibraltar 6608. It's not too expensive, but it's also not like spending over $200 on a rock and sock throne. So, I mean, just for example, you can kind of see here, an adult player, I'm sitting on something this large versus, there's just a night and day difference. You wanna have something more substantial if you're an older player. But overall, assembly was really smooth for me. And keep in mind that the rack clamps might take some extra time to adjust if it's like your first time setting up an E-kit. But the setup feels pretty compact and beginner friendly, which I think it would be a solid choice for younger drummers or players with limited space. But we have some issues we'll talk about later in the video. Now, playing on the Donner DED-200 MAX is a really good experience for a beginner, but there's a couple things we gotta talk about. First, let's talk about the machine gun effect. This is a big problem on all of the drum pads. So when you play faster notes like rolls or drags or flams or anything, the sound becomes really robotic. And it's clear that Donner only used one velocity sample, which means even soft hits are just quieter versions of the full volume sample. So it kind of hurts the realism of the sound, but I will say beginners are not gonna have the ear for this, so it might not even be a big deal. This is more like nitpicking for intermediate players and professionals. I wouldn't worry too much about that, but you can hear it in some of the sound demos that everything sounds really flat and not dynamic. Another small limitation we're gonna talk about is the hi-hat. You can't do foot splashes. It's not a deal breaker, but it is something worth noting. Rim clicks on the snare are difficult to pull off consistently, and this could frustrate beginners trying to learn the proper technique. Also, ghost notes and drags on the snare don't always respond accurately and can sound sometimes too loud even when played correctly. On the bright side, the choke feature on the cymbals works great, which not all kits in this price range do well. Like a lot of times you'll go to grab a cymbal and you'll choke it and you really have to grip the cymbal to get that to work. This seemed really natural. You could just hit it and grab it, and it knew right away to choke it. For beginners, the mesh drum heads still feel good enough to practice basic technique and get used to the feel of drumming. Once everything is tightened properly with the rack and everything stays in place. Even though it has a slight kind of bit of wobble to it, you don't really notice it. And I think the setup itself is stable for the most part. So the module comes with 31 preset kits, 450 sounds. We've got kits for genres like rock, jazz, pop. Let me just show you guys a couple of the presets to give you an idea of how they sound. The sounds are okay for an entry-level kit, but they definitely feel flat. If you're serious about the sound quality and you're using this kit, get your laptop, if you have one, out and look online for some drum VSTs. You can connect the module right to your computer with USB, load up the software, and you'll have a night and day difference in sound quality coming out of this drum set. So another area where the module falls short is dynamic range. We talked a little bit about the one velocity sample. The pads don't have different samples for light, medium, and hard hits. Instead, the module, what it's doing is it's just lowering the volume for softer strikes. So even if you're playing quietly, that sample still sounds like a big full hit. So this is common in kits of this price range, but it's still a pretty big drawback for me. So despite those issues, there's still some positives. The module is really easy to navigate. It's got this big rotary wheel on the front, so you can pick any kit you want. You've got dedicated knobs for EQ, reverb, volume. Quick adjustments are easy. The choke function on the cymbals is great. So it's a pretty decent kit overall, minus those few limitations. So is the 200 Max worth it? For beginners and hobbyists, I'm gonna go with a maybe. It's kind of up in the air right now. There's a lot of things that I'm not big on, but like for a newer player, these might not be that big a deal. Now, if we go ahead and we compare it against other competing models here, it's hard to pinpoint one kit that does one thing better than the other. The biggest problem that I see with this module is the lack of Bluetooth connectivity. I can't go on here and jam along to my favorite songs without, using a lightning to USB adapter for my phone. Now let's say you're a child of a parent, you get your drum set for Christmas, now you gotta ask them to buy another thing because you can't connect your phone to it. That is one area that Donner needs to improve on this. If you're gonna sell this kind of as a newer-ish product, we should have new technology in here based on what everybody else is doing. That is a huge limitation. Is it fun to play on? Yes. Does it have mesh drum heads? Yes. Does it feel pretty good? Yes. It's got everything that electronic drum kits at this price range have. I think we just need to reevaluate a little bit on the module side. Maybe get some better sounds in here, add Bluetooth functionality, and we'll be sitting pretty here. Now, the last thing I'll talk about before we wrap, this thing came with headphones, mind you, and these are gonna be okay for starting off, but these are pretty terrible headphones, and I don't really recommend using them. If you wanna upgrade one other thing on this kit, go with something like these Sony studio headphones. These are relatively cheap. I think they're about $79. This would be a good option. It sounds a lot better when you use better quality headphones, so keep that in mind. If you're using these and you think it sounds pretty bad, Simply just switching headphones will give you a better result. Despite the limitations of the kit, I still think the 200 MAX is a pretty solid choice for younger players. Be sure to use my Black Friday code for 25% off. I'll have it linked down below in the video description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. YouTube thinks you might like this video next. Let me know if they're right.